Welcome back to Access Granted. I'm your host, Mike Iannelli. Today, we're diving into stories about accessibility in e-commerce and the global impact of prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion with our friends from commercetools. You'll hear from Stephanie Forbes, Nicole Hayworth, and Marc Stracuzza, each offering unique insights into their roles at commercetools and their commitment to accessibility and inclusion. Let's jump right in. I'm very happy that you guys are here because there's a lot of cool stuff you guys do at commercetools, and not only from, a DEI perspective, but from an accessibility perspective and inclusion perspective. I know we started working together, Ablr, about, probably a year or so ago, or at this point, right? About a year?
A little over a year.
A little over a year now. E-commerce is such an important, or commerce in general is such an important situation today, especially when you talk about what happened with COVID and then web statistics flying to the roof. And now we've got assisted technology and online shopping has just completely changed the world we're living in. And I want to kind of open that up, Marc, to you initially is sort of when you think about products, you think about the site, you think about access, you think about business. What does accessibility mean to commercetools? Because that's a broad statement, but for someone who's really leading the space, what does that mean to your organization?
I think the first way we want to start this off is to think about that shopping experiences, commerce, and what we call e-commerce. It's really the portal into modern shopping experiences. So you have to have methods and websites and accessibility portals that people can reach on their own terms to buy the products that they need for everyday living, because everything these days is available online. You can grocery shop online, you do your home shopping online, of course, with marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart and things like that. Massive amounts of goods and services are sold online. So if you're not opening up the experiences to everybody, then you're really doing a disservice in multiple avenues. Of course, you're just doing a disservice to the end customer because they can't have access to these goods and services, to these modern shopping experiences. But I mean, selfishly, from a commerce perspective, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not able to sell. You're losing a portion of your prospective audience and your prospective customer base. So it's really it's beneficial in multiple avenues to make your experiences, as we like to call it, omni-channel, which is different methods of shopping, different ways to get in it, whether it's an app or a website, through your car, whatever that experience might be. And of course, you want is open to everybody, as many experiences types as possible and as accessible as possible, so you have your large audience.
So when you talk about that and how important commerce is, and you talk about omni-channel, and when I think about omni-channel, the old school mind for me is the marketing omni-channel. It's all the resources and sources that are falling into the engine. So whether it's paid search, display, social, it's having a holistic approach to an experience that covers the entire ecosystem.
Yep.
So I know that we've been working, Ablr supported you guys in some consulting, doing some testing, but and this can be open for anyone. I'm just interested in terms of what have you done, and what has been your commitment to accessibility as an organization? And I don't know if you're comfortable answering this question or not, but I'm interested in what has been done. And then ultimately on top of that, what kind of impact are you seeing? Because David was just in here earlier and we were talking about clients, and you guys have service a significant amount of folks as well. And I'm interested in what is the feeling that what you're hearing out there from the work that you're doing with accessibility, and if is it catching on for your clients, and is it catching on in your industry?
commercetools is a bit unique in this perspective. We subscribe to a methodology called headless commerce, which essentially is we don't directly have a front end for our core product. Now we do offer, as part of our offering, a front end. So I'm touching both bases here, but I'm going to start with the core offering and then go to the second. So what we have is a set of APIs, which is, for those who don't know what an API is, it's a program interface, application program interface, or application programmatic interface. But essentially, it's code connection to our services. I don't want to get too technical, but the cool thing about having that as your connection point for all of your services, and everything we do is exposed via API. So you can consume that in whatever way, shape, or form works best for you. There are a myriad of tools that are out there from an accessibility standpoint to be able to interface with APIs, because these are standards now, right? These standards are accessible. So whether that's you're using scripting languages, or you're using an API client like a Postman, many different ways, and these are all accessible tools. These are open source tools. There's all these different methodologies and someone who might have some kind of accessibility need, no problem, they can interface with our product directly. That's when they're interfacing with our products. Those are our customers. But then you talk about the end users, which is the shopping experience, right? Those are going to need the front end through the channels, through your website front end, through whatever methodology you're using to do your shopping experiences. And I think this is where we could talk about a different type of accessibility. This is your end user. This is the person going to try and shop online. And for that perspective, the cool thing is again, you're kind of going into the channel, and the channel is controlling the experience. So if you've got an application to run your shopping experience on iOS, well, iOS devices are great with accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
You have to meet those standards, and you have to be able to leverage those standards. Again, websites, this is one of the things we did with you, Michael, with Ablr, is to try to figure out how our website can be betterly accessible,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there is an onus on the website developer to be able to make sure that they're doing the services to make sure that you're not using methodologies that aren't able to be tabbed through for people who have sighted issues, or that there's multiple methodologies for dipping into the information that you want to expose. So I think from a commercetools perspective, it's two-veined. It's that we allow our customers, our direct customers, which is our major retail brands, and the customers that are providing the goods and services, and their employees and their people, to access our product on their own terms, and then to be able to expose that information through the channels that they need to, also on their own terms, because it's all wide open.
As far as optimizing our website in order for people to have external devices, whether it be keyboards or screen readers, so they can actually read things easier. They can look at they can have access to the images and the hyperlinks and all of that. We also have, which enabled a lot of things for our organization, the information that Ablr had opened our eyes up to. We were able to implement that, and we were able to share that with our web developers, our engineers. We're constantly evolving, and we're constantly keeping this before everyone, so we can continue to evolve and change things. We're also doing trainings. We're teaching people about accessibility. We're bringing in external speakers to talk more about accessibility, the importance of having people of all types, no matter your ability or not, to come in and be a part of the organization. We're including them into the discussion. So there's a lot of things that Ablr opened our eyes up to in order for us to be even more inclusive.
I want to know your opinions too. I'm assuming, given the shift to remote flexible working has done a lot for folks who have limited accessibility, right? So it's
100%.
like,
That's the number one barrier.
yeah. So it's like being able to do that from the comfort of your own home with whatever tools that you need to be successful in the workplace has to have had a huge positive impact on those folks.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when you think about, John and I were just talking about this yesterday, the barrier is so big in employment. We talk about ride sharing apps and public transportation and driving. And, you know, for someone even that lives 15 minutes away from the office, it takes them an hour and a half to 2 hours just to get in.
Yeah.
So there's an exhaustion of 3.5 to 4 hours of commuting. The tools, the tech, the office facilities aren't inclusive. It's just work from home orders and technology has radically changed the industry and frankly the world for many reasons. But for the folks in the community, it gives them it levels the playing field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the training and the education, but the part about Ablr Works, which is great, is so we work with the state of North Carolina and other states as well, but we recruit individuals that have this sort of motivating factor, that have visual impairments or low vision, and they want to do something different with their lives. They don't want to just sit on the sidelines and collect disability and just be part of, not say part of the problem, but they want to be part of the solution. And so now in today's environment, they can be. And so the Ablr Works program, it works with these individuals, brings them in, and we train them for a 14-week program to become certified accessibility analysts. We also have a cybersecurity program that we're launching as well. But the whole intention is to change and maximize the pool of untapped talent that has been on the bench or on the sidelines since the dawn of time.
And I do like that idea that, like you're saying, being in your own home space, which is catered and tailored toward your special needs, going into an office, even if a commute aside, you're at the office, whether the desk situation, is suitable for you, whether the corridors, the traveling to and from the office door to your desk, to whatever restroom spaces are available, all that is things that we sometimes take for granted, and someone with differing abilities are going to have a large struggle with. And think about it all the time, is just that idea of making the computer, the access to your work environment, with the toolings that you need to do your job day to day. Like we were talking about, I was talking about, it's great for programmatic interfaces because they're accessible if you're using the tools that are there to you. But of course, you have to have access to that tools. You have to have the system that is set up for you to use those tools. And if you're commuting back and forth and you don't have the ability to bring that with you, and some of these offices now are starting to open back up, and in some cases are starting to enforce having to come back into the office, and are we going to have a backslide for these individuals?
Now, when this first happened, I was thinking, man, I'm this guy. I like to be in the room with a
Yeah.
I'm with
whiteboard.
you.
Of course.
I'm like, I'll never do work from home. This
Yeah.
is so weird. And now it's like, I'm so much more efficient.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
if you translate that into the community, it's so much more efficient for all of us,
Yep.
right? To have the
Yep.
flexibility.
I think that's what I love is that you open our eyes. You gave us that awareness that we may not have typically been aware of, that there might be a problem for someone coming into the office. Now we're thinking ahead. We're not waiting till, oh, that's the day they're coming back in. What do we do? We're being very proactive. So I'm really glad that we connected with Ablr so we can not just only optimize our website, but start thinking about the office, thinking about how they're coming in, start thinking about the tools that people need
I love
to
that.
come in and work, and just giving them an opportunity, because we want to be inclusive, right? We
Mhm.
want to
Mhm.
include everybody, and that means everybody. Doesn't matter your condition, doesn't matter your race, your ethnicity, doesn't matter your gender, whatever. We want everyone to have a fair shot
Mhm.
and a fair playing field.
Yeah.
And Nicole, that kind of comes to your domain, right? Which is all starts
Mhm.
with the hiring process.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, inclusivity is so important in that hiring process, and there's a lot that you can do. But I the reason I started this conversation is I just think that flexibility and remote work has to be opening up a lot of doors that weren't previously open, which I think is an exciting thing, and I hope we continue to see it. I know, like you said, there's been some backsliding, but I'm hopeful we'll keep pushing forward towards increased flexibility.
Yeah. And it comes a lot with accommodations. And we were talking about
Yeah.
accommodations the other day. And I think the average, because a lot of organizations are like, well, I'm not going to pay for that. I can hire somebody that doesn't need it. But
Yep.
it's like, I think it's $500 is the maximum accommodation request that a lot of folks, it's $500 that can literally change the lives of
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
So when you think about what is that, and it's flexibility. I mean, a lot of it before has been stubborn. Well, you need to be here and you need to be in this office so I can watch you and I can make sure. And it's like, I probably work 12 hours a day now. I probably worked 8 before,
Yep.
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
Absolutely.
and, so, and truthfully, I was sending emails last night at 11:30. I had nothing else to do. So I'm also work all the time. But if I had to go to the office, different story.
Yep.
But I think talk a little bit about the hiring process, because
Mhm.
I'm interested, Nicole, in that, because workforce development is it's truthfully probably the future of what Ablr is going to be doing, and education. So when you acquire a new individual, there's always these misconceptions like, oh, I'm gonna bring in, I'm gonna make this effort, I'm gonna do this.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of things that need to be thought about in that process. And one of the things we always think about is it's great to bring in an individual, have that positive intent to say, I'm going to make a change for our organization. And I'm interested because it's easy to say we're going to do this, but then there's thinking behind it. So there's like, how do you train the rest of the organization to make sure they understand etiquette
Mhm.
and inclusive language?
Yeah, for sure. And I have to give a big hats off to Stephanie and her team, because they put a lot of that foundational stuff in place, like training around psychological safety
Mhm.
and microaggressions and words that we should use and not use, and the impacts that our words have on folks in general. So they really help lay the foundation. Stephanie and I were lucky enough to be part of the team who did a big series of unconscious bias trainings as well. So we actually traveled to all of our offices pretty much to go
Yeah.
give that in person. So we were in Germany for a while.
We designed the training. We worked together with the talent acquisition team, and we just really sat down and figured out what is best for the employees and to
Mhm.
understand how we can share that with them around terminology, around, look, everybody has a bias.
Mhm.
It's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's okay. We just
Love
want to
that.
make sure you're aware
Yep.
of your bias.
Yep.
So if you come into a situation, you know how to navigate it, you know what it feels like, what it means. We gave our own personal insights or stories that we've experienced as far as unconscious bias.
Cultivate belonging is one of our core values as a company. It's like
Yeah.
our second core value
Mhm.
as a team. So her team does a really great job of kind of laying that foundation for the company of, this is something that we are going to prioritize. So I think we just kind of layer on top of that from the talent acquisition side. And I think there's a few things that we do that I think are really proactive, but I think it really starts with the trust of the organization.
Mhm.
And we're very lucky that we have a lot of trust from our senior leadership to
Top down, right?
make these
Yeah,
decisions,
has to
to
be.
push back. I think typically recruiting and talent acquisition can be looked at as a support function of, I tell you I need this, you go give it to me. And it's very, very transactional. And I don't feel that way at commercetools. I think we are a very well-respected part of the hiring process, and they rely on us for our expertise, which I think is really laying a great opportunity for us to have these impacts. And if we are in the situation where we encounter somebody who might look or behave or act a little differently than the rest of the team, we have had the opportunity and we've been able to push back. If we get a no on a scorecard, so we get like yes, no, after an interview evaluation, we have the opportunity to say, hey, talk me through this. Tell me exactly why you think, from a factual basis, we always go on facts. And I think that's key to eliminating bias. That was a big part of our unconscious biases. If you're going to say no to somebody, you need to give us at least 2 reasons. They have to be facts. They can't be, my assumption is this, I presume this based on what they said. It has to be factual evidence based on what they stated, not your assumptions of what they stated.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yes. So we hold them
you.
to that. And luckily, like I said, we have the trust and the respect of the organization that if I push back on you for this, you know, A, that we're coming from a good place and we're doing it in a way to ensure that we're finding the best person for you. But B,
we're trying to find you the best possible candidate.
We are trying to find the best
and
possible
eliminate
candidate.
the bias, because a lot of people are saying, well, wait a minute, that person's, you know, this or that, and I don't really like them, or they came from another company and it's a personal vendetta versus, hey, it's about the real qualifications. But I'm interested in, when you talk about pushing back on this, where's the balance with culture and skill set?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So we actually struck the words cultural fit from our vocabulary, period.
Are you guys hiring? I love what you guys are doing.
It's a great place to work.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it is not something we refer to. It is not allowed in your scorecard. You can't say somebody's a cultural fit, because what does that really mean? So something I'm really excited about that we just rolled out last year was our structured interview process. And this was like a year in the making, year of hard work towards this. And essentially, we said every single role that we hire for at commercetools has 3 specific set of interviews that are designed to find a different characteristic about a person, and that's the only goal of that interview. The reason we're so specific on the structuring is because it eliminates a lot of bias. I think in the interview process, we're seeing a lot of people coming with their own questions about their own things that they're curious about, or we'll hear, gosh, I wouldn't want to have a beer with that person. And I really don't care if you want to have a beer with that person. I really don't. And that's why cultural fit is not it's not relevant. It's not.
Right.
And so something that's been really great is, as we are rolling out these new set of values that we have, we call them our guiding stars. We decided to make every candidate go through what we call a guiding stars interview, or you can think of it as like a values interview. The entire purpose of that goal is to ask questions that the talent team has formulated, so nobody's coming up with their own questions. We have a set of questions that are related to every single core value to us. And the entire goal of that interview is to determine, does this candidate have values that are aligned with ours and vice versa? So we're dropping cultural fit. We say values fit. Are they a values fit? And if you say no, I need you to point me to exactly which value and what they said and why you think that they are not going to be part of the values fit. Because cultural fit, like I said, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's a nice way of saying I'm biased against this person, or I don't
like
think
the
they're
old
going to
boys
fit in
club.
with the team, or this is an opportunity for me to exclude a certain group of people or a person based on my perceptions of them over a 30-minute conversation. So you're not allowed to decline somebody based on culture fit anymore.
What I love about our people organization at commercetools is this is a constantly evolving process. Like you said, they rolled this out at the end of last year. You've been thinking about it for a long time. I've been at commercetools for 4 years now, and it's constantly gotten better. We've constantly keep asking ourselves, what can we do to eliminate a bias? What can we do to make the interview process more comfortable, more inclusive? I know from a development perspective, one of the things we talked about is we used to have people interview with the development manager first and then do a development exercise. And we flipped that. We made it optional. They could flip that over. They could say, you could start with just coding. You could just start with what you're comfortable with before you talk to anybody and just submit a code sample. So anybody can come in, pull the sample down off the website, develop it, and submit it. And that's part of the interview process. And if you, you're starting with the talent, right? Before they even have to speak to anybody. And some people that's great with, and they want that. And some people would rather start with speaking to the hiring manager. And we're good with either way. It's really what's more comfortable for you, because we want your best self to shine through the interview process, because ultimately we want the fit that's great for commercetools and for the employee, right? Because that's
Totally.
that's when it
That's the
sings,
magic.
right?
Yep.
And I think that brings up a really good point with the structured interview process. Besides eliminating bias, which I think is going to be the biggest impact we see on our organization, I think the second piece that I'm most excited about is that candidate preparedness. Is if I have 3 specific interviews and I can tell you exactly what we're looking for at each step of the interview process, it's going to allow you to be better prepared for those interviews, because interviewing is nerve-wracking. And I'm very passionate about people can be really good employees and not good interviewers, and people can be really good interviewers and not good
It's like
employees.
the same thing when I took my SATs. They all said, hey, some people are really good at taking tests.
Yeah.
Instead, I went to East Tennessee instead of another school that was better for my
Yeah.
baseball
Yeah.
career.
It
But
worked
hey, it
out.
worked. I'm here today.
Exactly. They all have the same amount of information. They've all been prepared to what to expect per interview, which I think can take away a little bit of nervousness, right? Because
Yeah.
it's always stressful to go into an interview with who's going to be your boss, and then you don't know what's going to be thrown at you. So if I can say, hey, this interview with your boss, your future boss, is just going to be around your skill set and how your skill set can pertain to this best interview. That's the only kind of questions that they're going to ask you. Or this call is just based on these 4 key values that we have, just to make sure there's an alignment between your core values and our core values. And then it can enable them to come in and like you said, be their best self, because we want everybody to succeed in the interview process. That might not be a hire, but you should leave an interview feeling like, gosh, I did really well. I might not get this job, but I feel really good about that. And
Yeah.
I was well prepared, and I felt like I could bring my true self, because what we want to hire is your true self, not your interview self,
Yeah.
but your true self,
Yeah.
because that's who we're going to end up seeing
Yeah.
when you're an employee.
I think that's what I love about our talent team. They have evolved a whole lot. They have put in the work. They have thought about the different questions. They thought about the process, because they want to treat each person as an individual and not a number, like you said before. And they have excelled so much. And I just love that they're really thinking about each individual person, about the managers. The managers are great. They're asking, well, what more can I do? How can I help look for X, Y, and Z? You know, they are very engaged and involved. So they have done an amazing job.
So as we're talking about staffing, we're talking about hiring. Have you had an experience when you've interviewed folks with disabilities?
For
And
sure.
can you
We've
talk
hired
a little?
some.
For those who can't see, my face just lit up. But I want to hear about that, and I
Yeah.
also want to hear about how you two work together in that, and then truthfully, how, because you're a director of portfolio, right?
Yeah.
And so you're on the execution side of this.
Yeah.
So you're leading the inclusion efforts and DEI efforts for the organization. You're taking this information and deploying that in how you execute hiring and staffing and growing the organization. And those individuals that you're hiring and staffing are coming into people like you to support your organization and your team. This is really a wonderful little story you have, but I want to know about the disability side too. Tell me about who you've hired. Tell me about the process. And I'm interested in the organization and some of what accommodations potentially are being happening across the board. And
For
please,
sure.
this is all 3 of you.
Yeah. So we have hired folks with disabilities before, actually not too long ago. And I think it comes from the ability, like I said earlier, like the ability to have that trust to push back of, I don't know if this particular situation or this individual's accessibility needs are going to fit with the team. And we say, why? Tell me why. Like, if it's not going to be a fit,
there
like,
for a minute when you looked at me. I was like, I don't know.
you have to
I did not expect this side of you. For all of you being all anxious and nervous, I'm like, I don't even need to be here. Can you all just talk amongst yourselves?
From the talent perspective, we really try to look at each individual as like the skill sets that they provide, and not how they can increase the diversity of the team. Like, of course, that's incredibly important, but if they can do this job really well, why wouldn't we want them to do this job really well, you know? And of course, making sure the team is diverse is incredibly important to us as a company. But I think if they can do the job, like, gosh, why can't we hire them? Why can't we figure it out?
But I want to just jump in there for a second, and because you say, why is it? It's really important to the company, and I think it is to have a diverse set of people in the company, and and the reasoning isn't because we want to have boxes checked on a list. It's because that diverse perspective is just going to make everything better. We talk, I think we started this talking about product and
I'm
and
all
how,
over the place. We'll come back.
We can circle it back in, but the idea is the more diverse perspectives you have that are helping you develop your product and your product strategy and your product roadmap, then the better you're going to be building products, the more people you're going to be building products for, and the better thing you're going to deliver. And of course, again, selfishly from a company perspective, that's great for us because the better product we have, the more successful we're going to be, right?
That's right.
But it does all start with having a diverse set of thought and a diverse set of abilities, because that just expands the set of information that's informing the process of building your products. So I really do think that it's all circular, right?
Mhm.
And it all ties together. And without that diversity of thought, then I mean, by definition, you're going to have a very myopic perspective, and you're going to be building things that are just not for everybody.
Yeah,
And we don't, and especially in commerce, you don't want to exclude anybody,
Yeah.
right?
And say that again.
Yeah, especially in commerce, you don't want to exclude anybody,
All right, maybe one more time.
Yeah, we'll do one
Okay.
more time.
But the thing that I love about the diversity of the hires is problem solving. You know, and it's always, you know, John and I talk and our team talks. It's like when you have a disability, you have to come up with innovative solutions to achieve what you want to achieve, because the world isn't set up for success for you.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the capabilities of an individual who has a disability, problem solving is typically one of the number one things you look for in someone, because they have the ability to find their way to a solution. And regardless of how they do it, it's the thinking that matters.
Yep.
Because one of the things that happens a lot of time in staffing with folks with disabilities, it's not accessible, right?
Yep.
So the website's not accessible, the job description is not accessible. How do I print off directions to get there isn't accessible. How do I get there isn't accessible. How do I get in the building may not be accessible. How do I get to the front? I mean, so the whole process is different.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in what are the challenges that you have faced, if any, in the hiring process, and then how have you solved them, or what's the process for solving them?
Can I interject here first?
Please.
I think it started with bringing awareness to people, defining what diversity really is. Because when people think about diversity, they think about race and sex, you know, the genders. We try to really broaden our idea of what diversity is and include every intersectionality there is. We really are good as far as training our employees and teaching them about dispelling all of the myths of people with disabilities, bringing in people to talk about their stories, because I'm more the human aspect of things.
I love that.
Sharing the perspective of a person's story. Like, for example, if we look at this water bottle, you know, can everybody open this water bottle? We don't even think about, well, what if somebody has a defect on their hand? Are they able to twist this? We need those people at the table in order to come up with ways to
Problem
create
solving.
this product
Well
so
said.
everyone can use it. So I think where we have done better
I'm gonna grab one of
is
those water bottles.
where we have done a good job is bringing awareness about people with disabilities, educating people, not calling people out, but, you know, gently reminding them of things that they may say or may be doing. We're being more proactive as far as our insight. So I think it started with that, and it really just trickled on over into talent acquisition, where they have really been the leaders of pushing back and asking those.
You literally so that's the beauty of what you guys are doing. Because one of the things I think about with Ablr all the time is, I always say that, John, it's not accessibility. It's we're transforming organizations from the inside out. And a lot of that goes back to empathy and understanding people's positions. And I say this to people all the time. Yeah. And I, you know what, John has said this. I've referenced John 100 times in these podcasts, but you know, you say proximity builds empathy, and I don't claim to be like, you know, the smartest guy in the room by any means, but it took me a bit to figure that out. Yeah. And when I figured it out, it was like, wow, you know, it's really hard to be diverse and be equitable and all these things if you're never exposed to it. Yeah. We all have those biases. because we were raised with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's understanding. And what I love that you said was like, we all have them.
Yeah.
You know, not being judgmental and hating on each other for having them, but being accepting and understanding that, hey, look, this is the world we grew up in.
Yeah.
It's different. We all had different experiences. We all grew up in different areas. This is where we are today. Yeah. But what do we do with the knowledge we have today to help change tomorrow?
I can speak from like a personal perspective. So my dad actually has a disability. He has a minor form of cerebral palsy. So I grew up around that. And I think when you talk about that, I always try to think, and my mom and I discuss this all the time, is like when my dad goes into a job interview, that's tough because his speech is slurred. He has a wide gait when he walks, but he's a perfectly smart individual. So I think it's all about kind of like leading that with compassion. And like you said, growing up around it, I think there's been a lot of probably situations that I've entered into where I don't have those assumptions about people, especially around a disability like my dad's, because I know how capable and smart and hardworking he is. And especially like growing up in the 50s, and now thank God it's like so much better, but like for him to even do half of what I do, it's twice as hard or 3 times as hard. So like the endurance and the hard work and everything is like even multiplied for somebody like that who has to just get through a bunch, like you said, like with the commute, just to do what I do as an able-bodied person. Totally fine, but like it's like showing up with that first impression. And yeah, it's very interesting because I can speak to it from a personal perspective too.
Thanks for sharing that.
I was gonna say, I think what's interesting about the disability community in and of itself, and I know that there's even that word within the community is kind of a hot topic, but the idea that it's not one thing, it's not an obvious thing necessarily. We talk about like race and gender, they tend to be more obvious, although not necessarily. But with a disability, there's a lot of disabilities, neurodiversities that you will never know by looking at somebody, whether or not they have this. And so this umbrella, it makes it a much more complicated topic because it's so over encompassing of so many different segments or subclasses of what we would call a disability. You know, obviously think of hearing disabilities or visual impairments, or like you're saying, physical disabilities. But again, there's so many more that are just on the list. And in some way, shape, or form, it probably touches everybody in small ways that maybe we don't even know, especially when we get into neurodiversity. We talk about the different way people think differently. I like to say this story a lot because my wife and I just realized this recently. We were having a conversation a couple of years ago, and I was reading an article on one of those major forums that everybody reads, and it was a person talking about a condition called aphantasia, which I had never heard about in my life. And I was like, well, what is this? And it's like, oh, when I don't see visualizations in my head, was this person describing it. And it was like, well, I was like, well, I don't see that. I don't see visualizations in my head either. And I looked at my wife and I was like, do you see pictures in your head? And she's like, of course I do. And I was like, wait a minute. So like, if you just say, like, picture a red ball in your brain, my wife sees this perfectly crisp 3-dimensional red ball in her headspace. I see nothing.
Wow.
Nothing.
Really?
And my whole life. Never knew I had this. Apparently, I'm one of the 3% of the people in the world who have this condition called aphantasia. Well, it's a neurodiversity. My brain works differently than everybody else, right? How is that impacting me positively and negatively in my life, right? I mean, at some level, I'm in a very successful place in my career, but I'm sure there have been moments where it's good and bad. It helped influence my ability to do something or not do something. But we don't ever talk about that. I would never have known about it. I was 45 years old when I found out I even had this thing, right? And I think that there's so many neurodiversities that make us different. And it's not a disability necessarily, but it is a difference.
We all play a role. And I think, and even with visual impairments, I this is going to sound ridiculous, but I always thought it was like either you can't see or you can. And there's so many
spectrum,
you know, retinitis pigmentosa, macular degeneration, cataracts. I mean, there's there's people with low vision, complete blind. I mean, everyone is different. And even when you think about growing into disabilities, we're all going to have a disability. It's a future as we get older. Physical, right? Mental, cognitive, you know, visual. I mean, I wear glasses today and my vision is going, I tell John jokingly, I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I can't see anymore. What's happening? But it's something that we have to work. It's like a proactive approach to it. And I do believe inclusion ties into faith. I do believe it ties into humanity and kindness and goodness. And I do believe that. I think that has to happen because it's so easy to say, be selfish and say, I just got to do my own thing. You know, and that's not how humanity was created. Humanity was created as a group, as a collective, you know. Thanks for joining us in today's episode of Access Granted. I hope you found the insights from Stephanie Forbes, Nicole Hayworth, and Marc Stracuzza as lightning as I did. Their stories about accessibility in e-commerce and commercetools' dedication to diversity, equity, inclusion are truly inspiring. Remember to stay tuned for part 2 of this conversation, where we'll have more thought-provoking discussions on holistic human inclusion. Stay tuned.